Hey everybody, so I'm going to walk you through how to set up IMOD to trace your nucleus. So we're going to open up a terminal window, which for Windows is Minty, which would be under, if you go to All Programs, and go to Sigwin, it'll be right there. For Mac users, it should be under Utilities, and you just open up a terminal window from there. Alright, here we type IMOD and hit enter. I'm going to bring up the IMOD startup window, and we're going to want to put in an image file. That's your electron microscopy images. And those image files will always end with a .mrc. So here's our file, .mrc. Going to hit open. We don't have a model file yet, so we're going to leave that blank. We're going to go ahead and open up both the model view and the zap window here. If you don't check this, once you have the zap window open, you can hit the letter V as in Victor and open up the model view. But we'll go ahead and do that from here. We'll hit OK. And it'll load up. This is your main IMOD window, reading images. And here's our EM image. Now this EM is inverted, so all the whites are black and all the blacks are white. To switch that, we're going to hit F11. There we go. You can see 3 cells here, 3 neurons with fairly large nuclei. And here's a glial cell down here. It's a little darker than the neurons. We want to make sure our contrast is good, so we're going to hit Auto in the main window. Also notice that we're in movie mode right now. We want to change that to model mode. Alright, we're set up. So because we didn't have a model to begin with, it automatically created this object 1 for us. And we want to edit that to make sure that it's the way that we want it for tracing our nucleus. So we're going to go to Edit, Object, Type. I'm going to bring up this window here. We're going to give our object a name. We have a naming convention, and for this volume, it's P2, postnatal day 2, and then underscore and C, whatever the number of the cell is. We'll just make up a number here, so C20, and then we want to trace the nucleus, so nucleus. Now here we want to make sure the object type is closed, so that our contours will automatically close themselves. And most of these other options should be fine. We do want to change the line width to something a little thicker so we can see what we're tracing. We're also going to set that as a default settings, so that from now on when we create an object, at least these settings, not the object name, but all the other settings will default to what we just selected, and we'll hit done. Okay. Now we also want to change the color. Our nuclei are traced in red, so you go to Edit, Object, Color, and change this from this green to red by increasing the red, decreasing the green, leaving the blue at 0, and we'll hit done. Alright, so we now have a red object 1. You'll see that there are 0 contours in it currently. So we need to find the end of our nucleus. I'll use this cell right here as an example. We'll hit plus to zoom in a little bit. We'll get it in the center of our screen. And we'll use our page up and page down keys to find one end of the nucleus. There we go. So looks like our nucleus appears at around slice 240 here. I want to zoom in more so that we can get that a little higher contrast here. we'll go ahead and hold down the front button on the pen and trace a contour. There we go. We don't want to take the contour all the way to the very end because we will allow the program to close the contour for us. See, we just click off of the contour and it automatically closes. Now this is kind of a jagged contour. When you normally trace, your hand has a bit of a jitter to it, and we're going to use a tool to actually remove that. So if we go back to our main window here, go to Special, Drawing Tools, you'll see down here under Modify Contours there's a Reduce and a Smooth option. Now we can either click those buttons when we have this contour selected, or we can use the keys R and E to do the same thing. So I'll do that. I'll click on the contour. You can see that it was selected because the green beginning and red end show up, and then the yellow circle shows us which point I selected. And I will hit E for reduce, or E for smooth rather, and R for reduce. We can actually hit that a few times, but as you'll see, we're losing resolution on our trace. So you want to be kind of sparing with that. Let's say I don't like how this turned out. We can hit Control Z to undo. Actually do that a few times until we get back to something that we like. If we want to redo it, you can just hit E and R again. Let's say I don't like what it did here. Well, in order to change that, rather than going back and tracing everything all over again, I can go back to my drawing tool window and go to Sculpt. And Sculpt will give me a small circle that I can use to literally push my contour so that I can get it to where I like it. So let's say that's good. Alright, and if you want to change the radius or the diameter of the circle that you're using, you can either switch over to your mouse and use your mouse wheel up and down, or if you don't have a mouse with a mouse wheel, if you go to mouse/keyboard here, down to Sculpt Circle, you can change the Sculpt Circle radius directly there. So I'll change it to 10, for example. Hit OK. It's a large circle. Go back in here and change it to 3 as smaller. Okay. So we have one contour so far. If we switch over to our model window, we can see the contour there. We can use the same controls to zoom in and out here. Use the plus and minus to zoom. If we hold the back button on our pen and click, we can rotate around to see our contour in 3D. Now that's just one contour, so it's not particularly useful. So we're going to go over here and we're going to trace another contour. Now instead of tracing the next contour, what we're going to do is we're actually going to skip a few contours. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll skip to 5. And we'll trace this contour. It's a bit bigger. Now, if I feel like I'm running out of room on the pad, or I want to move my hand, I can just release the button and then click it again before I touch the pad again, and it will pick up where I left off. So let's get a contour here. Go. Not great for accuracy, but we can use our smooth and our reduce tools to fix that a bit. Important point, you have to have the drawing tools window open in order to use smooth and reduce. Switch back to normal. Click our contour, use smooth and reduce. Take out some of those jagged edges for our contour. Also want to fix this down here. Now if you have the drawing tools window open, you can actually switch on the fly through your drawing tools with just the number keys. So 1 is our normal tracing and 2 is our sculpt mode. So we can go in here and sculpt this down to something better approximating what our nucleus looks like. Alright, we'll call that good. Now if we switch back over to our model window here, you can see we have 2 contours now, but we're missing the space in between them. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our main IMOD window, go to Special, and select Interpolator. Now Interpolator you want to make sure is on linear interpolation type, but the rest of the settings should be good. And what I want to show you is, if we switch over to our model window, reduce this window down a little bit so we can see our model window at the same time. We'll click on our contour here and just hit enter. And it will fill in the contours in between through linear interpolation. Now, that having been said, this is not always the greatest in terms of accuracy, especially if there are large changes happening, such as from our first contour to our 5th contour. So you want to make sure you always go back and check. Yeah, see, didn't quite do a great job, but we can fix that with our sculpt tool. We'll go in and we'll sculpt this contour, for example. Now you see I'm leaving some points behind as I'm sculpting. IMOD will actually automatically remove those points for us, so don't worry so much about those. We can also go from the inside of the contour out and sculpt outwards. And once again, it will remove the extraneous points. We can also use our smooth and reduce tools on these interpolated contours. You can tell a contour is interpolated by the fact that it's a dotted line rather than a solid line. And once we have our contour the way we want it, we can hit enter again, and it will actually re-interpolate the contours in between based on the new contour, and should give you a higher degree of accuracy. See, it's a little bit more accurate now. There'll still be a few little touch-ups that we'll have to do, but not that many. And once the structure starts becoming a little more stable, changing a little bit less over the course of multiple slices, you should see an increase in accuracy for the linear interpolations. Let's try one more. I'm going to touch here, make sure that my drawing tools window is open. Touch here and press 1 to switch back to normal tracing mode. And we'll trace around this nucleus one more time. Almost done. We'll get close to the end and we'll let it close for us. So I'll click off here. There we go. Use our smoothing and our reducing tools, E and R, a couple of times to remove some of the jitter from my hand. And bring up our model window again, reduce this window down. And you don't have to have the model window up in order to use Interpolator, just using it as an example. But you do need to use the Zap window in order to use Interpolator. So click on our contour in the Zap window and hit Enter. And there you go. It's interpolated in between. So we'll take a look at these. You'll see in spots like this, where there's very little change, that it's pretty accurate. But in spots, for example, where there's a protrusion later, It's a little less accurate. So we'll go here, we'll hit 2 for our drawing tools, or for our sculpt rather. Reduce down that piece that's jutting out. Maybe do a little additional sculpting while we're here. Bring this out a little bit. Hit enter. There we go. And you'll see that that protrusion, at least on the previous contours, has been removed. Alright. So the nuclei don't take up a huge amount of slices in the volume. So we're going to go from 240 to 140, so about 100 contours, or 100 slices rather. So if you go every 5 slices, you should only have to trace about 20 total contours and use interpolator to get the rest. And you're on your way. So hopefully this has helped you jumpstart your nucleus. Next time we'll talk about tracing the cell body.